Hey you prodigies, ProdCharles here, and as promised, here is the 5th Bendy and the Ink Machine Theory Compilation that I will be releasing to the channel. This video will help you catch up with all the Bendy theories if you're new, or help you remember things you forgot if you're a veteran prodigy. So get ready to delve into the dark secrets of Joey Drew's cartoon studio that will blow your mind. Remember to subscribe and tap that bell for more cool and interesting horror game theories, and share this with a friend who loves Bendy and needs to know more about the lore. Get ready for the theories in 3, 2, In Volume 1, we covered the possibility that Joey Drew wanted to sacrifice his workers to bring life to his animations. In this volume, we'll expand on this a bit. Volume 1 hinged mostly on the idea that a human factor came into play for the success of the rituals. This volume will ignore that and assume that a perfect ritual took place. If this is the case, then each worker's connection to the cartoons can still be considered, as it makes sense that they would transform into the cartoon that they have the closest relation to. We've mentioned in the past that we would probably see transformations like Joey Drew becoming Bendy, Susie Campbell becoming Alice Angel, and Sammy Lawrence becoming Boris. If the rituals were carried out perfectly and everything happened without a problem, then each of these workers might be encased in animated bodies to act as the 3D cartoon's internal organs. This idea arose from the fact that we see Boris the Wolf's corpse with his chest split open in Chapter 1, but Boris appears just fine at the end of Chapter 2, and these things happened before and after Sammy was seen in the music department respectively. It's possible that the Inky prison of a body that Sammy mentions is just the state that Sammy had to be turned into to be one of the 3D cartoons, and this applies to all of the workers. Not only would their souls be part of the cartoons, but so would their hearts, minds, and every other organ you could think of. Their whole being would be encased in the tunes. I cover this in a lot more depth in my Is Sammy Boris theory, which you can watch by tapping the card that appears in the top right. But this basically means that the Inky body is a state that Sammy needs to be in for the rituals to work properly. And it might be the state that all of the workers have to be in for their transformations to be successful too. Given how uncomfortable Sammy was, it's no wonder that Ink Bendy goes on such a rampage. Maybe it's really Joey Drew doing his best to escape from his Inky prison. If so, why would Sammy treat him with more respect than just that which you would offer to a boss? Perhaps there's more to this than we originally thought. On top of this, why would Joey Drew in the form of Bendy go out of his way to crush Sammy in this vulnerable form? What do you think? Another Bendy and the Ink Machine theory? You betcha! Hey you prodigies, ProdCharles here, and in this video I'll be sharing with you another Bendy and the Ink Machine theory. This one will explain how Sammy got his inky body, and is volume 3 of a series of videos I am making to explain this concept. Let's revise what we know. We know that Sammy Lawrence is the music director at Joey Drew's cartoon studio, and he doesn't seem very passionate about the music he used in Bendy cartoons. We also know that some crazy rituals have been happening at the studio that involves bringing the characters of the Bendy cartoons to life. And finally, Sammy is the only human-like character that we've come across so far, and he claims to be living in an inky prison of a body. Got all those facts? Now let's bring it all together. In volumes 1 and 2, we covered the possibility that Joey Drew wanted to sacrifice his workers to bring life to his animations. In this volume, I will share a brief analysis of the other case, which is Joey worshipping some kind of higher power. The reason why we can suggest that Joey Drew wants to perform rituals for a higher power is because Wally Franks leaves an audio cassette on which he says an odd message that suggests this.
Also, get this, Joey had each one of us donate something from our workstation. We put them on these little pedestals in the break room to help appease the gods, Joey said. Keep things going.
It also makes sense that, given the supernatural nature of the events, and the many references to some kind of ink magic or alchemy taking place, an entity of this power would exist in the Bendy and the Ink Machine universe. What does this mean for Sammy though? Remember that in my Is Bendy Possessed theory that this higher power, or one of these higher powers, could be influencing Bendy's behavior. In other words, instead of Bendy being a happy-go-lucky toony character, which he appears to be on the posters around the studio, Bendy would instead become a vicious ink creature that we would come into contact with in the game. Think about that. Team-friendly Bendy would be a reality if this didn't happen. What a bummer. Well, when it comes to Sammy, something similar may have happened. Despite whatever passion for music he may have had, Sammy already seemingly disliked his work, and probably thought that Joey Drew's rituals were kooky at first. Perhaps Sammy's inky prison of a body is the price he paid for not being loyal from the start. In Norman Polk's recording in Chapter 2, we find out that Sammy often rushed to his sanctuary and stayed there for long periods of time.
Every day, the same strange thing happens. I'll be up here in my booth, the band will be swinging, and suddenly Sammy Lawrence just comes marching in and shuts the whole thing down. Tells us all to
Sammy's recordings in Chapter 2 suggest that he ran there to regulate the pumps in the music department, and could also be interpreted as him having some alone time after having so many people in and out of his office while he worked. Sammy's work environment may quite literally have been an Inky prison for him, and in an ironic twist, the higher-powered entity or entities may have transformed his body to reflect this. Maybe it could be seen as punishment. What do you think? It's been a while. Hey you prodigies, ProdCharles here, and in this video I'm going to share with you a Bendy and the Ink Machine update. I've got a couple of these updates rolled out, but I think I'll leave the second one for tomorrow because this one's kind of more relevant right now, and it might be a little bit mind-blowing, so hold your horses. What I'm going to share with you is going to serve as a little bit of an update for that theory we did on Sammy Lawrence being Boris, but it could lead on to other things. Basically, about a month ago, I got my computer just blue screened on me. About a month ago, I got DM'd by a prodigy by the name of Gamer Fun on Twitter, and they had an image to share with me which was very interesting. It was basically a screenshot of what you see when you beat Chapter 2 of Bendy and the Ink Machine with a few markings on it. So what you can see here is a picture of a puddle of ink, which is basically probably Sammy Lawrence. As we've seen, Sammy gets crushed into a puddle of ink when Bendy comes while he tries to do but ends up failing his ritual. On the left we can see a Bendy cutout, we can also see an axe lying on the floor, and we can see Sammy Lawrence's distinct mask on the floor there on top of the ink puddle. But what Game of Fun has pointed out to me is on the right hand side of the screen. Taking a look at the bottom right of the screen, we can see what looks like another Bendy cartoon cutout, and it kinda looks like it could belong to Alice Angel, although we can't see any halo or any horns, so it's hard to be sure. But if you take a look at the top right, you can see what looks like a foot, and this foot looks distinctly like Boris's foot. Now prodigies, that's why I think this is more of a Sammy is Boris theory update, because if that's Boris's foot, then Boris was around when Sammy ended up getting crushed by Ink Bendy. This may mean that Sammy actually was transformed into Boris. On the other hand, a lot of prodigies have been pointing out that there could be cloned Borises at the studio. If this is the case, it could be one of those Borises. And another case it could be is the whole Boris is revived by the ink flooding the first stage theory. Basically, a lot of people think that ink flooded the studio in Chapter 1, causing Boris to come back to life. Whatever the case, it's pretty interesting and a little bit sneaky to see Boris at the scene of the crime of Ink Bendy's crushing Sammy. What I'm super interested to know is how Boris, or this Sammy/Boris or whatever, ended up getting to the lift that we end off Chapter 2 at, when he walks around the corner to greet Henry. Although if it's a cloned Boris, then well, it's another Boris. What do you think? A Bendy and the Ink Machine mystery? You betcha. Hey you prodigies, ProdCharles here, and in this video I'll be sharing with you a Bendy and the Ink Machine mystery. This one will cover the mystery of who blocked off the entrance to the Ink Machine. So what's going on? In Chapter 1, after collecting all of the items to complete the ritual, Henry restores power and ink flow to the Ink Machine. When he tries to go back to the Ink Machine, however, he finds that the entrance to the Ink Machine room is blocked off. Many are curious about who did this. Some have pointed fingers at a couple of the characters we've been acquainted with so far. While they might seem really convincing, we should really try to consider all of the cases from what we know. We should also look at the motives, the reasons why each character would want to block off the Ink Machine to make better guesses. Do you think you know who did it? Well, let's dig deeper. From what we've seen, it looks like the Ink Machine is blocked off to keep Bendy inside. It's obvious that whoever did this knew what was going to happen and either wanted to just save themselves or save themselves and Henry. There are quite a few characters who we've been introduced to so far who might want this, both cartoon and human. Let's look at the cartoons first. The cartoons that we know about so far are Bendy, Boris, and Alice. We can quickly rule out Bendy and Boris, as we've already seen Boris's body and leave it behind to get to the Ink Machine room, and it is assumed that the room is boarded up to keep Bendy inside the room. After all, why would Bendy want to keep himself from escaping the Ink Machine? This leaves Alice. Would Alice want to do this? Possibly. Alice appears to be some kind of angel. While there is debate over whether Alice is a fallen angel or an angelic cat, in either case, Susie Campbell's recording in Chapter 2 suggests that there is some kind of rivalry between the two characters. They are clearly in a popularity contest in the cartoons produced during the events of the game. Not only this, the fact that we have an angel against a demon is pretty striking evidence. Perhaps when Alice hears the ink machine turn on, she knows that Bendy would be unleashed and act as quickly as possible to keep Bendy from being completely set free. Before moving on to the human characters, it's important to point out that it probably wasn't the searchers. The searchers tend to spawn in areas with inky puddles, and the area around the ink machine appears to be quite clean. The searchers also look like they could be on Bendy's side, as they still attack you after Sammy gets squished. Now for the humans. Could it be Sammy? We've already seen a lot of evidence that Sammy might have been snooping around in the studio in Chapter 1 in my previous Bendy theories. The update to Chapter 1 also showed us that Sammy probably had a small room to himself. However, I don't think that Sammy did it. We've seen that Sammy worships Bendy in Chapter 2 and wants Bendy to be free so that he can set Sammy free. Even though it didn't work out that well for Sammy, he probably would not have tried to keep Bendy from roaming the studio, unless he did it to set up the rituals in the music department. How about Susie Campbell? It's possible that the strong connection to Alice Angel that she feels would cause her to keep Bendy from escaping. This would be to protect herself and possibly Alice Angel herself. Depending on what theories you believe, things could get quite confusing, but if you think that Alice and Bendy are rivals, then it makes sense no matter how you look at it. It's also possible that Norman Polk was the one who did this. Norman mentioned in his recording that he thought Sammy and Joey are crazy weird and particular. Maybe he did eventually talk with Joey Drew about Sammy's behavior and found out how dangerous Bendy could actually be. When he noticed that the ink machine was fixed, Norman may have boarded up the room to stop any chaos from happening. This leaves Joey Drew and Wally Franks. Both characters are fully aware of the strange things happening at the studio. Provided that Joey Drew isn't Bendy, both may have done this in fear of what Bendy is capable of. Let's not forget Sammy Lawrence's sacrifice in Chapter 2. However, if Joey Drew really has his own sanctuary and also acts as a prophet for Bendy, like Sammy did, then I don't see why he would want to stop Bendy from being unleashed either. Why would he want to stop his savior from escaping and setting everyone free? The only thing that I can think of is that he may have realized what he was doing was wrong, but it would have been too late. If Joey Drew really sent the letter to Henry to see the ink machine, then I don't see why he would try to stop Henry from seeing the ink machine when it was fixed. Again, this is unless it's part of a more elaborate plan, but let's keep things simple. Finally, we have Wally Franks to consider. As Wally Franks is a janitor, there is a high possibility that he was also involved in repairing things at the studio. After all, in Wally's recording he seemed really annoyed by the pipes bursting, and he calls the machine noisy and messy. Wally also seems to be the kind of character who doesn't understand why Joey is so obsessed with appeasing the gods, and like Norman, he thinks that Joey lost his mind. This suggests that he could be handy enough to quickly board up the ink machine room when he heard it start up again, and he might even be the one who broke it in the first place. Why would he break it? Being so familiar with Joey's rituals and cleaning the mess around the ink machine, he probably saw that it was necessary to use it to bring Bendy into this world. Knowing of Ink Bendy's nature, he may have stopped the ink machine and made Bendy go away by stopping the ink flow, turning off the power, and removing all offerings to the gods. When Henry came and repaired everything, Wally would have done everything he could to stall Bendy from escaping from that room and get out of there as quickly as he could, as he knows he would need to hide from Bendy before getting the chance to break the ink machine again. What do you think? I think that whoever did this was probably a human being. Recently, the official Bendy and the Ink Machine Twitter page tweeted this GIF teasing at one of the doors opening near the ink machine room in a future iteration of the game. I think that this would have been the moment that someone like Wally would have come out to board up the room. This would have happened before the Bendy jump scare in Chapter 1, as we can see that the area isn't flooded with ink yet. Even if it doesn't hint at that exact moment, it does allow us to see that someone was hiding or waiting in that room. In Chapter 1, we can also see footprints leading from the ink machine room to that very room in the GIF. But unless we see Alice Angel's feet, it's hard to say whether it belongs to her or a human. If Alice is modelled similarly to Bendy and Boris, then it's safe to say that this foot looks like a human's. A human who knew the wrath and destruction that would follow, prompting them to delay it the best way that they could with the time that they had. Remember to subscribe and tap that bell for more interesting horror game mysteries. If you enjoy horror game theories, be sure to check the description for a link to all of the theories and secrets, and prodigies, I really hope that these videos help you to expand on how you think, so it helps you with your thinking in your daily lives. See ya!